Hey guys, it's Alex here. We are here with Paul Ronin. We're actually trying something. I don't know if any other YouTuber has ever done this, but we are streaming simultaneously to both of our channels. So I'm going to be watching the comments on the Proper Person channel. He's going to be watching the comments on Ronin Man. And for the most part, he's going to lead because you guys know how much I love questions, not so much monologues. So go ahead and take over. Paul?
Hey, how's it going,
Pretty
Alex?
good.
Yeah, dude, we before we started the stream, we were talking about the men's
Yeah.
movement, and that's kind of that's a lot of what litigation's all
Mhm.
about. Like, what were you saying about, kind of what you discovered?
Well, what I discovered was that these movements that are men's movements are really, I hope, at least I hope this is not just me being idealistic, but I hope that it's more about scrutinizing the legal system and less about dividing men and women and making men and women go after each other. I mean, I know how it is on my channel. I mean, I have a pretty healthy 50-50 subscribership. And that's because my channel takes the approach of the problem is the government, the problem is the statutes, the problem is the laws, the problem is the judges. I don't see the problem as women. And I've seen some clarification coming from the MRA groups and the MGTOW groups on that. Of course, there's always going to be the bad actors, but I hope to see more of that. And I hope that we could talk more about that. And I guess that's why we're doing this. So,
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. It's the litigation, if you give a flamethrower and a match,
yeah,
to people, they're going to
yeah,
use it, and that's the problem. And that's what people don't realize is when the opportunity is there, human beings will take advantage. And it's about making it more fair so that people have power. And until now, a lot of guys haven't had any very
right.
few rights. So that's why the men's movement started. And I think a lot of the good guys in the men's movement, they understand that, what I mean. They want fairness. They just want, they want to have healthy kids. They want to have a healthy
Hmm.
life. They want a balance, but they don't want to get screwed over. That's the
Right.
thing.
And it's so, I feel like some people, they kind of trivialize it, especially the people who haven't gone through it. They kind of think, marriage is about, good faith and trusting each other and stuff like that. And on the one hand, I mean, it is in a sense, but it's so hard for them to sort of see what it feels like to actually go through a system and have your stuff taken from you. I mean, the system is supposed to divide things equally and make it so that really, both sides have a fair and equal separation. But it's come to the point where the public's perception is that there's nothing equal about it, and that unfortunately that's the angle that's being taken by the men's rights movements and the MGTOW groups. And I mean, I can't even fully dodge it. In fact, sometimes I am confronted head on and I have to admit it. The reason we have equality in Nevada is because the law says so. Before the statute was enacted, we didn't. And I still see issues with gender bias in certain areas where there are discretion. That's why I talk so much on my channel about the importance of the statutes and the problem of discretion. I think the your groups, I don't mean to group you into all of them, but I think that there isn't really a technical understanding from the MRA groups and the MGTOW groups that I have in my channel. And without knowing technically what's wrong, I think it's hard for people to know why it's happening. And I think I mean, the ignorance is one of the biggest issues with why the system, I don't think, has been getting any better, despite so many people becoming aware and grouping up on YouTube. Uh,
Yeah, well, the thing is, when you're fighting your first lawsuit, it's very easy to fall prey to, the belief that something's against you because you're being confronted with a very combative situation, and you don't have the tools you need, especially if you're representing
mm-hmm,
yourself in your first case. And that's what a lot of guys are in that situation. So it does feel pretty unfair. And the thing is, one of the things I've learned that was kind of a shock to me is that essentially there is a lot of essentially unfairness in the world. I mean, I kind of had this impression, Alex, because I've never been sued before. I've never been in a
mm-hmm,
legal case in my life. Like I've always been able to work things out. So I just kind of had this understanding that the law was going to be fair. You know what I mean? Like that's why I thought, well, people are going to see common sense. They're going to, you know what I mean? It's going to be fair. And then when I actually, the more I talk to guys, the more I see situations, I'm like, wait a second, it's not about fairness. About if you could file and get it, get your way, right? And it's
Hmm.
like if people have more money, if somebody's fighting a criminal case and they don't have a lot of money, they're really bad situation. And that's something I've learned. Not a child custody battle, but let's say a criminal case. If somebody's like set up to be the fall guy and they don't have any money, they're in a bad situation. And I don't think I really understood how brutal this system could be to people before.
Yeah, the reason why I think it's so brutal is because I don't know if this is how it started out, but I do know that this is how it ended up. It's become a business. It's not really about what's right and wrong and statutes and fairness and our rights and our citizenry, and it's really just turned into a giant business. And it's just all these attorneys graduated, they open offices, they have to run a business. And it's one of, kind of going back to what you said earlier on when you have the match and the flamethrower analogy. If you have rules in place and judges who will demand, the right thing, then the attorneys will, for the most part, fall into line. But if you don't have those rules in place, if the judges don't take control of the cases, then the attorneys run amok. I hate to say this because I think a lot of times it just turns people against attorneys. They're already very unpopular. And I just want to stress that I really think that the problem isn't the attorneys. I think that the problem is the judges who let them run amok. It's kind of like, who do you blame? The 5-year-old, that burned down the house, or the parents that left them alone? And so, I mean, I hate to talk about that, but I have to talk about that because that's where I think everything that you said is coming from, is that it's turned into a giant business. And that's all, for the most part, that's all most attorneys care about, is operating their business and generating a profit. That's the point for most of them. Anytime I'm generalizing, I usually have to have that disclaimer because there are a few rare ones that aren't like that, but they're so hard to find. And anyway, that's where I think the disconnect is. I think ordinary people
Well,
think it's a system for us, and really, it's not. We're just kind of sheep that go through it and we get fleeced. We come out on the other end, a whole bunch of things happen to our lives. Some of us are thrown in a cell, some of us lose our kids, some of us lose a house or money. And then it's like, bye, move on, who's next? It's like, it's just kind of a conveyor belt that we all just go through. And that's just where we're at right now with it.
I think there's two interesting points. Like for example, for let's say dentists,
Mm-hmm.
dentists spend a lot of money in school, right? They have a lot of loans, a lot of debt when they get out of school, and so naturally, a dentist, they make a lot of money with things like implants, so they can just drill your tooth out and then put in a post and put on a tooth, and that's very easy. It's fast. It doesn't take a lot of, it's there's not a lot of complications. It's very simple. It's high profit, and so a lot of dentists, they're going to do an implant even if they don't need to, and they're going to drill if they don't have to, if they don't really have to, because it's more profitable. And I read a really great expose on dentists that's really fantastic, and I'm going to send it to you because it's I think everyone should read this because the dentistry has just gotten out of control. A lot of it is because the bills are just so high that you got these guys with a lot of debt. Now they're renting an office. Now they have a secretary. Now they have rent. Now they have to have an image, right? They have to have a car. And all of a sudden, you go in there with like a little toothache and they basically have to make money like right now. So the system sets up the lawyers in a way that they kind of got to make their way. So it kind of sets them up to be like that. I personally never have been sued, and I've never sued anybody. So in any country, so I didn't have a bad impression of lawyers. Actually, I didn't have a bad impression of judges. My impression of the law before just recently was basically the law was a fantastic thing that brought us, gave structure to society, made things fair, allowed you to, invent something and patent an idea,
Mm-hmm.
get royalties. It allowed people to be rewarded for success. I always saw the British legal system as the difference between, some countries that were colonized and had the British legal system. They tended to be more successful. So I always saw the legal system and lawyers in a good way. And I never bought into the kind of, I never buy into like society memes anyway, but
Mm-hmm.
I never thought anything bad about lawyers in my life. And I still don't actually, but I can see now that, the situation is that it can be very dangerous. You know, dealing with the law and dealing with lawyers can be extremely dangerous because the most subtle thing can really put you in a position where you're not able to present evidence or you miss a deadline or just something goes wrong and all of a sudden you're completely screwed essentially, right?
Right.
And it's just based on some small thing that nobody told you. So I think that it's important to take the emotion out of it and just to see it one for the system it is, and then also to be prepared and to be robust as a man. That you're ready to handle anything. Like you're up for it, right? You're up for the challenge,
Yeah. I mean, I
despite the difficulties.
yeah. I, I mean, you've touched on so many issues. Like, I do think that the legal system definitely improved areas where there was no law at all, and I've never really advocated for dismantling it in any way. I think that it's really unfortunate that the public has to get so involved because the system has gotten so out of control. The thing that's so strange to me is the public is already so involved with the legal system because of child custody cases. It's not like the old days where I don't think many people interacted much with the legal system at all. Now, because of child custody disputes, it's got to be at least 40%, 50% of people that interact with it in some way, whether they're getting child support or something.
Wow.
So I'm just so flabbergasted that even though so many millions of us interact with the legal system, how are we not able to take control of it? How are all of these people so disorganized that this teeny tiny insular legal community, the teeny tiny judicial and legislative communities can just completely and totally dominate the entire population. Not just this country. I get emails from people in Canada, people in the UK, people in Australia, which these systems sound even worse because some of the attorney fee bills that they have in those countries are so astronomical. I don't know how anyone ordinary gets an attorney at all in those countries. Unless I'm getting bad information from those litigants. I'm hearing people are paying $25,000 just to retain an attorney for, settlement. They're not even going to trial on that. Over here, that's like a full-blown trial. Anyway, it's just
Right.
it's just like I don't know how this happened. I have done this. I created this channel to put my story out there, to teach people how to represent themselves so that they can save their children. And now I'm starting to get connected with people that have nothing to do with child custody, people who are complaining about issues in guardianship and probate, people who are complaining about issues in their criminal proceedings. And then, of course, I ended up creating Our Nevada Judges. It's like there was this gigantic hole where just nobody was watching anything. And I guess after all these years, it really did just turn into the mess it is now. I mean,
Right. An interesting thing happened to me when I was in China. I had a friend and he had a business, and I was at his house, and this guy from Texas, and I just happened to be over at his place, and he discovered that his partner was ripping him off. And so, like really badly, like this guy had money and he was getting ripped off super, like, millions of dollars. So he called the police and the police came and I speak Mandarin Chinese. So I was in the house, he doesn't. And so the police came over and and he was saying like, he was telling me like, can you translate for me? Tell them that don't let this guy, his the guy that worked for him, Jimmy. He said, don't let Jimmy take anything out of the house. He's already stolen. I have the evidence here. And so I was translating for the police for him. And it was very interesting for me because the police in China, this was in Shanghai, they were like basically asking me all kinds of things. And I was, basically translating for my friend. And I was really amazed because they 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 were not sticklers for detail. What the bottom line is, they were extremely fair, and they just looked common sense at it. They just said, "Look." In the end, they realized what was going on. They said, "Look." They told Jimmy. They said, "You cannot take anything out of here. Like I don't know what the rule is here, but you can't take any more stuff out of here. He needs to have the evidence." And they got him out of the house. They took his keys. They put him out of the house. They didn't arrest him or anything, but they basically helped out, and they were just very helpful and very useful. And the thing is my friend was totally right, and he had been screwed. And in the end, he didn't get the money back. But I just felt like here in America, they would have been like, okay, what's the rules here? They wouldn't have been like fairness at all. They wouldn't have been able to make any decisions. It would have been like, we need to follow this rule, and he has his stuff in here for this long, so he gets to take this. You know what I mean? In China, it was like much more common sense. And I'm not saying it's always like that in China. I'm not making any kind of pitch here for China, but I'm just saying like common sense is a beautiful thing when you finally see it. And that's what I think. I mean, I know you're against. I know common sense. Like we need the laws, we need the statutes, and I know I agree with you 100% that we need the statutes, we need the law. That's how we get consistency in law, right? But also, there's just I don't know. There's part of me that's just like damn common sense, like
Well, the problem
somebody's
with the problem with common sense is it doesn't always work. So sometimes, like for example,
I know.
well,
I
here,
know.
no, yeah, I do want to talk about it. I don't want to just discard it. So when my judge said, "Hey, you're going to exchange your child at midnight from ages 2 to 7," common sense would dictate that that's beyond stupid. You don't need laws for that. That's just stupid. Who does that? But then you have other areas where I mean, like, come on, there's where common sense comes into play there. Something's wrong with him. Then there's other situations where it's not so clear. Like, okay, somebody created a child. Who's going to pay for the child? The government? Welfare? The dad? The mom? How much are they going to pay? 15%, 12%, 8%? Now we have a problem because now common sense actually can point in a variety of different directions. So you could have somebody who says, well, common sense is she wanted to keep the child, so she has to pay for the whole child. Some other people might say, well, common sense is it's society's job to take care of that child. Other people will say, well, then people are just going to have 100 kids and not take care of them. Then other people will say, okay, well, if child support isn't going to be paid, it should just be 5%. Other people might say, well, it should be 10. Some people will say maybe it should be covering the food. Other people will say, now it's not so clear. So when you have, hey, this judge says exchange a child at midnight, people will say something's wrong with that guy. We don't need a law. Other people in other areas like child support will have a variety of different opinions, all of which seem to follow common sense, and now we need a rule. The thing is, when you make a good system of rules, you kill litigation. If you have a series of statutes that says exactly what's going to happen if you litigate, less people will litigate because they'll know what the outcome is going to be. Today I was doing my usual chores with our Nevada judges and going through the appellate dispositions, and we had one disposition on alimony where the wife asked for $3,500 a month and the judge gave her $6,800 a month, and the husband filed an appeal saying that's not fair. She asked just for $3,500. Why did you give her almost twice as much? And the Court of Appeals said, sorry, there's nothing we can do because the legislature enacted a statute that says that the judge can award alimony so long as it is, quote, fair and just, unquote. What the hell is fair and just? Nobody knows what that is. So that's a crapshoot. So that actually makes more people litigate. So when you say, hey, common sense on alimony, let's just let the judges award common sense on alimony. You're going to I'm not saying that's, I'm just using that there as an example. I'm not saying you're saying that, but I'm saying like that makes more people want to fight because now they don't know. Maybe they'll get more, maybe they'll get less. Now there's chaos there. There's an uncertain and unknown. I didn't want to put that in your mouth, but I wanted to just use that as an example of where you actually do need a rule, because then less people will go to court if they know there's an exact formula or something specific. I don't know if you want to go ahead and go into your next question.
Well, you covered that so well in your discretion video, and so I totally I mean, I agree with you. Like, the more discretion that is available, just to recap what I got from it, was basically the people that are representing themselves assume that this is where the judge is going to be on their side. Because the judge's discretion, for guys who are listening that don't know what that is, it's where the judge can decide for himself. So there's no clear rule. So the person that's representing himself says, okay, wait a second, I'm not a lawyer, so the judge is going to give me a break on this one. But what you said is that's when the lawyers are really good at taking advantage.
Yes.
And getting that discretion on their side.
Yep. Absolutely.
They know how to do it. They know the judge. They're friends with the judge.
Yep.
And whereas you're just self-represented, you don't, So I know what you're saying.
Yep.
I really, I guess the balance would be is, I don't know if this is even possible, but can you imagine a legal system where you could just file it on an app?
I would love that, yeah.
There wouldn't be all this complicated wording. It would be very simple. the rules would be very clear and very ironclad.
Hmm.
That would be perfect because you could litigate, but you could do it quickly and you could do it cheaply, and it was very consistent. And there's very little discretion.
Right.
That would be a beautiful legal system. You could just like, boom, you could file a lawsuit, you could figure it out, get it done,
Right.
and then move on with the day.
That is completely possible. It is very possible for the legislature to enact statutes that make sense to us. I don't know why they don't do that. When I go to work and I work, there's certain developers, software developers, put together this train wreck of code, and it's like, why is it like that? Do you just not know how to do it right, or are you doing it on purpose? I feel sometimes that something's going on with the legislature where they just enact a series of statutory schemes that conflict with each other, sound like they make no sense at all. It doesn't have to be that complicated. I think that, at some point in time, if the public was knowledgeable enough about the law, the public could demand a statutory scheme that is plain and easy to read and makes sense and fits together. But I mean, now we're going like way beyond even, I mean, that's like step 2, 3, or 4. I mean, I'm just trying to get to step 1, which is to just take away all the discretion. My viewers are posting a ton of questions. If you don't mind, I'm going to blast through these really quick. And
yeah, I've got a bunch here too. So go ahead.
So just say hi to Shay, hi to EM Solid. Let's see here. Iowa specifically calls for gender equality in practice that is not even close. Scooty Puff, if the statutes in Iowa call for gender equality, the problem may be that your litigants don't know how to file appeals. That happened in Nevada too. As soon as a bunch of fathers and mothers started filing appeals, the Court of Appeals and Supreme Court started to basically go on a warpath, overturning decisions left and right, and the judges fell into line. So once the legislature enacts the statute that you need for gender equality, then it's on you, the parents, to start basically thumping the judges over the head when they don't follow the law correctly. If enough parents do this, the judges will fall into line and they'll start to follow the statute. Hopefully your Court of Appeals or your Supreme Court will reverse those decisions if they're erroneous. I assume that they will. We have a pretty good Supreme Court here in Nevada. Highway 419 says we should have systems in place to give legally undeserved a fighting chance in sudden litigation. No, that doesn't work, Highway, because it's abused by narcissistic personality disorder individuals, emotionally immature individuals. I've heard of too many systems where you just have to claim you're a victim of domestic violence, and all of a sudden everyone's claiming they're victims of domestic violence just to get a free lawyer. It doesn't actually work. We got here Scooty Puff saying he'd rather go to the dentist than see his lawyer. I think that's in reference to your AR Alonzo says he's preparing a petition and class action lawsuit against all U.S. Family Court for violation of the 14th Amendment. AR Alonzo, that's not going to work. So that amendment protects us from the government. It's when CPS comes into play and stuff like that. It's not going to work with divorce and child custody because that is the government mediating between you and your ex as to what your rights are supposed to be with regards to your children. So that's going to fail unless you're specifically trying to confront the CPS system, which most people actually on my channel aren't. Most people are in ordinary run-of-the-mill divorce child custody cases. Tumblr says, paid a corrupt GAL. What do you think about taking them to court? You could sue them if you want to, but it's really difficult. Usually they get some kind of immunity unless you can show that they are doing something outside of the boundaries of their profession. I'm almost done, Paul. There's a few more here. I'm scrolling through. Some of these are duplicates. The system is designed by lawyers for lawyers to make money, period. Scooty Puff, for the most part, I agree. The only areas that I disagree are areas of the law where there are saturated money interests. So I would say real estate, financial sector, industrial sector, military sector. These sectors have incredibly powerful corporations that easily squash the lawyers. So they end up taking control of their legal structures. So the areas where the lawyers do have control is areas where poor people are. So evictions, family law, child custody, divorce. That's where all of us regular, mothers and fathers who just make ordinary amounts of money are. And in those areas, the attorneys do actually have control of the system. So you're right. Joe Packett says void for vagueness, Sessions v. DiMaia. So this is a criminal constitutional issue. It doesn't apply in other areas of the law. When there are vague areas in the other areas of the law, the judges basically can do almost anything that they want to unless they abuse their discretion, which is a pretty crappy standard. I think that's everyone. I'll let you go ahead and go into yours now, Paul.
Okay, I want to hit you first with for the people who are listening from Ronin's side, you know, Alex's channel is not for everybody. His channel is very specific for people in high conflict situations. And I wanted to, because if you're in a situation where you have an agreeable person, a reasonable person, there's no reason to be suing and there's no reason to be filing motions. You know, you can just work things out, right? It's very simple. But if you're in a situation where you can't, then you have no choice and you have to litigate.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to say, like, for a lot of people, they hear the word high conflict. And obviously, when they see someone like you or one of my friends, Stuart, you know, he was in court for almost 8 years. You know, so of course you can call that high conflict. But are there any early signs where you could say, you know, this is a high conflict situation, or when did you first realize that this was a not a normal situation, or did it just take years? I mean, when did you finally like,
Oh,
okay,
that's a good.
this is high conflict?
That's such a good question. It took me a long time. At first, I thought I just needed to get her to like understand what it felt like to be in my shoes. I felt like she was just kind of immature. I would kind of talk to her like, "Hey, you know how you did this to me? How would you feel if I did that to you? You know, when you scheduled an appointment and you didn't tell me about it, like imagine if I did that, how would you feel?" And I just kind of thought that that would work with her. And she just didn't care. In her opinion, I don't even want to say it was just because she was the mother. She just felt like she just could do whatever she wanted. It was like an inability to really understand the perspectives and the feelings of other people. So I started to think maybe, you know, I was really an amateur with psychology, so I just was like, maybe she's just like a sociopathic person. I didn't understand what any of those terms meant, and I was thinking, you know, at some point something's going to give here because she has this particular issue. Later on,
Yeah.
the problem with that approach is it just kind of you kind of just treat them as an alien, and you're just like, they don't know what's going on and I do. I'm good, they're evil, I'm right, they're wrong. That's also kind of an infantile approach to the whole conflict. Finally, I started to watch videos from Sam Vaknin. I already know a bunch of people don't like him, and so I dedicated an entire video to the topic as to why I believe what he's saying. It's my video is narcissistic personality disorder, and I cover every possible
No,
angle
I
on
like
it.
Sam Beckman.
Well, I just
Yeah,
wanted
I
to let
watched it.
people know, if you disagree, watch that video because I go a lot into some of the issues people have with Sam Vaknin. But anyway, watching Sam Vaknin's videos made me realize that to her, what she was doing made sense. To her, the conflict was her identity. It was who she was. It gave her life. She couldn't sleep at night if there was no conflict. To her, it gave her relevance. It made her matter. And I started to realize that this is a big problem because she believes not only everything she's saying, but she believes in her cause. So I started to realize high conflict is about another person who needs conflict to survive. And what this made me understand, this is probably year 4 or 5 when I figured this out. This made me realize, of course, litigation is the only solution. This person can't, and they can't stop the conflict, or they themselves feel like they disappear. This person won't survive if the conflict ends. And at that point in time, I realized I really do have to use the court system to save our son, because she's never going to agree, because then she feels like she just vanishes, like she's nothing. That's like me telling her to stop drinking water. She's like, okay, if I do what you're saying, I will die in 4 days. I can't stop. It was like an addiction. And so,
I think you know, when you're saying that, I think a lot of people won't kind of get it. I thought of one thing that people could understand is, okay, let's say there's two people playing poker, or let's say you're playing Monopoly. Let's say poker because there's real money, and then somebody keeps stealing money off the table. A normal person, you'd say, hey, don't do that. There's $100 missing. Put $100 down there, or we're going to take $100 out of your pot when you leave, or something like that. They'll work something out. The person, the person that doesn't respond to that, so they just keep taking hundreds out. They don't care. They just like, you tell them, you catch them, you see it in their hand, you see it put it in their pocket, And then everybody at the table is like, hey, he took another 100, she took another 100. And then the person just keeps taking hundreds. Like, that's when you finally need like a policeman to come
Mm-hmm.
in, and a policeman will say, look in there, open, empty your pockets, and then there's a bunch of hundreds, and then the policeman will do something, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the normal person doesn't need the policeman because they might want to take the money, and they might even take $100, but then when they realize, that the other person now needs the money, and they'll start feeling guilty, and they might not put the 100 back, but they're not going to take any more. Normal people have a certain amount of kind of empathy for others, and they there's a limit, right? There's a limit to where they go. But somebody who's there's something wrong with them, they don't get it. Like, they'll just keep taking and taking and
Right.
taking, and the only way you can stop them from taking is you have to call the police.
Right.
Police have to open, force them to, show what's in their pockets, and then the police have to put them in a jail
Yeah.
cell. And it's terrible because it's not good for them. It's not good for the
Yeah.
taxpayers. It's not good for anybody. But in the end, there's certain people that they basically think their mindset is, I'm just going to take because no one's going to stop me,
Exactly.
or I deserve it. So I know if it was money, I would say somebody who doesn't respond and they just keep taking, and then finally you have to call in the law. And I think, but what specific, can you think of anything? Because this is what guys want to do. They're in a case, or women are in a case, and the other person's doing stuff. What was a specific thing that you said, looking back,
Oh, I got it.
you could tell your younger
I got
self?
it. Okay, so you want to know the specific incident. That was the dental dispute. And there was a very specific moment in time. So when
How far in the
that
case?
was 2014, it probably was January-ish. He had 5 crowns, 2 extractions. That's what he had after the surgery at age 7. So it was severe. What made me convinced that I needed to do everything in my power to take control was the moment that he needed his pre-op appointment. I told her, the dentist says he needs a pre-op. If he doesn't get his pre-op within 24, 48 hours of his appointment, he won't be able to get the surgery. So I said, it's your day. I don't want to take your day from you, so I'm going to schedule it during your time. So she responded and said, no, you can't schedule stuff on my time. And I was like, well, that's odd. Wouldn't she give me like an alternative? She didn't give me anything. She just said no. So I responded and I said, okay, I'll just go and take him, and then I'll bring him back to the school. So then she responds and says, no, you won't. That's my time. You can't take him. And then she literally drives all the way to the school, goes into the office, and threatens the staff and says, if you let him take him to the pre-op appointment, I will either sue them or hold him in contempt. She threatened him in some way, shape, or form. At that point in time, I realized this is not a person who's just neglectful, like a drug addict who just doesn't care, who's just like asleep on heroin or whatever. This is a person who's not passive. This is a person who is trying to take active steps. It's like she made a checklist. Step 1, ruin his teeth. Step 2, block the pre-op. It's like she's methodical about it. It was like it was the engaging decisions that she made to get in the way of that appointment, that specific day, that flipped the switch for me. That was exactly the moment in time when I knew that I was going to have to use force. And in fact, I even talk about this in the video control. And I call it a terrible conclusion, because we reach this terrible conclusion that the only thing that's going to work is force. If you don't do this, this child will suffer. And I hope I answered your question. That was the exact moment in time when I knew.
How long was that? Like, from, let's say, from the first, you filed for divorce, right?
Yeah.
So how far away from when you filed, the day you filed, until you realized that there was something abnormal about her? How long was that
That
period?
was, for me, that was 6 years, because I started litigating August of 2014. So, no,
See, there's
sorry,
got to be
sorry,
something
sorry,
faster than
sorry,
that.
sorry. I started litigating August of 2008. Well, there is something faster, Paul. It's this. People have to become educated. Remember, I had no knowledge whatsoever. I had no advice from my parents. I had no friends that understood what it was. There was nothing how are you going to figure out something quicker when nobody knows what it is? So, I've had a lot of viewers on my channel that were able to figure it out within 1 or 2 years. They litigated their cases and wrapped it up within a year or two, whereas it took me 8. The reason why is they had guidance. They weren't just wandering aimlessly for years. They had a roadmap, a blueprint. They had.
So what I get it, but so what I'm saying is like, let's say you are the blueprint. You're the roadmap for yourself.
Mhm.
What incidences did you miss? What red flags did you miss now that you could go back and say, okay,
Oh, I got some
I didn't
answers.
have to wait six
I got
years.
some answers for that. So, what I would call it is, there's so many. So, the first thing is you're going to believe lies because you want them to be true. You don't want to go to court. You hate court. It's terrifying. And so, in your brain, you will lie to yourself to find reasons why you don't need to go. You will say, "Oh, she's figuring it out. Oh, she's trying. Oh, maybe she's just having a bad day." Okay, your own brain, or the judge won't listen, or the lawyers won't listen. Your own brain will find ways to make you take actions that are ineffective, or to make you not take actions that will actually just exacerbate and lengthen the pain for not only you but for your child. And the high conflict X knows this. They know exactly what you're trying to avoid. It's like there's this uncanny way that they can figure out, okay, he hates court, so I'm going to do these particular things. And they know you're scared of court, so they'll get away with it. And so it's half steps. Sometimes I would have the wrong solution in mind. So I would think I need to prove that she has a mental health issue. That was the wrong approach. And it took me a while to figure that out. And I published a video on that called Evaluating Mental Health. And I explained why that is usually a very expensive waste of time. There's another approach that I had, which was, okay, I just need the court orders to be perfect. If the court orders are perfect, she will follow them. I have to have them airtight. And that led me to the fallacy that I discussed in the video behavioral orders and in the video gray areas, where I realized that that doesn't work because this person needs it to not work. They need there to be something for them to exploit. So no matter what you do to make a perfect court order or parenting plan, they find some way to get around it. And honestly, the only thing that works was the deprivation of custody and the termination of parental rights. And if I would have taken that approach from the beginning, I may have been able to solve it a whole lot quicker. And unfortunately, the legal system doesn't like the sound of that. If I tell the legal system, hey guys, the solution to these high conflict cases is to deprive them of custody, and if they don't stop, terminate their parental rights, I look like an evil person. And so they don't listen to that. They don't get that. And that's one of the reasons I'm publishing my whole story. So hopefully maybe lawyers will see it too and realize that this is bigger than just one hearing or one motion, that this is something that goes on for 8 years. I hope I answered your question in that gigantic explanation.
No, but I wanted some of the specifics that you ignored in order to not go to court, because you were kind of hoping against hope that this wasn't real. What kinds of things did you ignore that you wouldn't ignore now, or later in the case you didn't ignore? What was the kind of, like, she didn't show up, or I know the dental thing, that was like
Well,
that was the
I feel like I was
before
I
that.
feel like I was pretty aggressive with litigation, but I feel like I didn't ask for the right thing. So, I mean, I didn't ignore the fact that she kept him for 8 months and didn't let me see him because I filed a lawsuit. I mean, I guess I should have asked for primary physical custody straight out of the gate. And I guess I could have demanded that the judge turn over the mental health records. Those are two mistakes that I made. Revealing the mental health records to me early on would have definitely shortened the time. So that was an abuse of discretion on the judge's part. So, for example, I could have filed an appeal and had him ordered to turn those documents over to me. Instead, I didn't know because I was ignorant, and he got away with that. So that's a mistake that I could have fixed.
So he knew she had mental health issues,
He did.
and he didn't tell you.
So here's what he did. He abused the in-camera review mechanism. So you can ask for in-camera review to determine whether or not evidence is relevant. If evidence is not relevant, then that's it, it goes away. But if evidence is relevant, then you're required to turn the evidence over. So he abused that, and he decided that he would tell her, this evidence is relevant, and I'm going to keep it if you give up. And so she and her lawyer stepped out of the courtroom, and then they walked back in, and her lawyer said, hey, she gives up. She's just going to let him have joint physical custody. So he was able to use that to keep to hold on to those files. I needed those files as a father to know what was wrong with her. So later on, I used a couple of mechanisms to have those turned over to me, but he once again blocked them using a technicality in the rules of civil procedure. So the second time he abused his discretion and imposed an attorney fee award to get me to back off. So, I mean, I was doing the right thing, Paul. The problem was the judge was incompetent. So eventually he recused himself. He filed an affidavit admitting that he was biased. And once he admitted he was biased, he was forced off of the case and another judge took over. So I think that if I didn't have to deal with the incompetent judge, I could have gotten those records quicker and I would have been able to make a faster decision. Does that answer your question better?
Yeah. So, right, that's even something that you couldn't even see. It's these kind of things are really difficult to spot, these kind of red flags. Because this wasn't even her, this was the judge.
The judge was protecting her, yeah. And the judges, I think it's mainly out of ignorance. They just don't know what they're doing. I don't think the judge rolls out of bed and he's like, hey, I'm just going to be evil today. I'm going to just screw this dad over. I think that they're just easily suckered. They go into court, the lawyer says a few things, the judge is suckered into believing whatever they're saying, they're duped into it, and then they just eat it up, hook, line, and sinker, and then they find a way to violate the law in a way that works in favor of that attorney. But until you figure that out, as a society, I mean, I don't know, we're getting into purges now. I mean, purging the judiciary of those types of judges is another thing that we need to do as a society. I mean, I don't know what else to say about that. I'm getting blown up on the comments. Keep going, though. Keep going.
No, I love it. Keep going, yeah.
So Jas Max says, what have you learned about from Alex or Arnavetta? Oh, never mind. That's a question to another viewer. I'm going to scroll up, see if we got anything here.
I got a bunch more questions, so no shortage of questions on my side.
Yeah, so Shay says Judge Weller made it terrifying by being such a bully. It's not just litigants that complain about that, Shay. Even attorneys said the same thing. The word that they used, many attorneys have used to characterize him as bully. But I mean, it's not even just him that's a problem, because we're about to go into two big fat abuses of discretion with Judge Rob. And I'm publishing one of those videos in about an hour, so watch my channel, you'll see it pop up. And we got two more coming up. So Judge Weller was obnoxious and obvious, so you can see. He's like the dog that's barking. But there's the worst, situation is the dog that's not. Is that, the ones that are really quiet about it and they're insidious about their techniques. And that's what you're going to see with Judge Bridget Robb. There's going to be a few examples where she does the same thing that Weller does, but she's not obvious about it. Now, the Court of Appeals will step in and overturn her decisions for me, which is nice, but this is bigger than just a terrifying bully of a judge. We have a problem with a family court bench that just thinks they can do whatever they want, and that is mainly, I think, the fault of the legislature for enacting statutes that communicates to them, hey guys, do whatever you want. Nobody cares what's going on in this sector of law. There's no money there, except for the divorce industry. And so do whatever you want. So I'm going to go ahead and let you take over, Paul. I think that's the two big questions that I wanted to take from my commenters.
Okay, great. Let's say for somebody who is in your situation in the beginning where they are ready to file for, let's say they're married, they're gonna file for divorce, or they are unmarried and they're gonna file for child custody. What walk us through, like not obviously the whole thing, but like, where do you start? What do you need? What mindset do you need? What's your life going to look like? Like, what is the challenge you're embarking on? If you could compare it to preparing for a big fight or for a big race, or for to get a master's degree, how would you put it so that people could say, okay, I understand what I'm up against, how long it's going to take, what's my first step, where I'm going to be spending my time? How would you say if someone's going to file for child custody or for divorce?
Oh my gosh. The first thing is act immediately. So the longer you wait, the worse it's going to get. I think the biggest reason people delay is because they want to stay together for the kids. But one of the things that I realize is the kids are getting a terrible example anyway. They're not seeing two people who are in love. They're seeing two people who hate each other, who fight each other. So dispense all those ideas and move as quickly as possible to litigation. Once the litigation starts, you have to watch your ex's reactions very closely. If she starts lying and saying you're beating her up, abusing her, and I'm using this perspective because I'm male, please treat this as gender neutral. It just would sound weird if I try to act as, I mean, I'm a guy, so I'm going to use this perspective. If she starts lying and saying you're an abuser or any of those things, you need to start getting as far away from her as possible. Get out of the home. Don't meet her in private places. Exchange in public if possible. You have to do everything in your power to not let them create evidence. If you are a good parent, you are entitled to at least joint physical custody of your children and at least half your assets. So what your opponent is going to do, if they are some kind of malefactor, some kind of person with emotional immaturity issues or problems, is they know you're a good parent, so they're going to try to create evidence that doesn't exist. And this happens as soon as the separation starts, or as soon as they suspect you're going to separate. Once they suspect that you're going to leave them, they immediately realize, I need to create evidence. This guy is a good guy. I will lose if we go to court like this. So I have to do something to trigger some kind of event. And that's what I see over and over again in my channel. I get emails from my viewers saying the same thing, that everything was great. All of a sudden, they said that they beat them up, or they fought them, or they threw something at them, or sometimes they'll just take stuff. They started taking everything out of the home. They took money out of the accounts so that they couldn't get an attorney. You have to act swiftly and decisively and litigate the case as quickly as possible. I know people say, you should try and work things out and stuff. Hey, guess what, guys? The court system is slow. So as quickly as possible in the court system is months. If you can't settle something in months, something is wrong. I don't understand why people will go through years and years of settlement negotiations. That's torture. I mean, you got to move on with your life. So, I mean, that's my approach, Paul. I hope that that's good advice for your viewers.
Dude, that is fantastic, Alex. That is so decisive and so true. Because if somebody is showing, well, obviously, if somebody's lying, if somebody's making things up that are extremely dangerous for your future and your freedom, you have to protect yourself. That totally makes sense. One, you got to get away, and two, you got to make sure that you're making smart moves, because I don't think a lot of guys realize, and this is kind of what we started at the beginning, is that your life can be totally ruined by a false allegation. And a lot of guys don't believe that. And that's one of the problems with innocent people, is like an innocent person will, if the police stop them, they'll say, what are you doing here? And say, oh, I was walking through the neighborhood and this. He'll just answer a bunch of questions. He won't realize. Whereas somebody who just robbed, a store or a bank, they're going to be very careful. They're going to say, well, I was watching, like my friend was saying, I was watching a Star Trek episode, yesterday at this time and this. They're going to have the perfect answer. Whereas the innocent person tends to just talk, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you are an innocent person and you find yourself in a situation where you're being set up, you need to act fast. You need to be very, very careful. You need to take it heart attack serious, and I totally agree with you.
And one of the things that helped me understand this was the standard of review on appeal. A lot of people think, oh, well, you're going to go to court and you're going to tell your story. They don't understand. Judges get things wrong all the time. So once you learn how appeals work and you realize how deferential review works, you realize, I don't want to take any risks with this crazy person. I don't want to gamble in any way, shape, or form. I want to minimize any kind of allegations that they can raise. Because if an allegation is raised and the judge says, hey, I believe that, well, now you're stuck, because on appeal, the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeals is going to say, well, we defer to the findings of fact of the judge, blah, blah, blah. So you want to not be in a room by yourself. You want to not be, all the things that I already said. Interact as little as possible, exchange as little as possible, minimize everything that you possibly can, reduce everything to writing, and make it so that there just is no area, as few areas as possible, for your ex to abuse the weaknesses in the legal system, because that's, in my opinion, what they're doing. And the attorneys know this. The attorneys know testimony is evidence. They know that. And so the attorneys know that you don't need to have a photo. You can just say, hey, when you were in that doctor's room waiting for the doctor to come in, didn't he punch you in the face? Didn't he choke you? Oh, well, maybe. Well, say he did. Now what's going to happen in court? Now it's word versus word. The court's going to say, well, based on the testimony of the witnesses, I believe that person. Finding of fact, domestic violence finding, protective order entered, you lost custody. Now you can't fix it on appeal because it's deferential review on findings of fact. Once you learn the technical stuff, you realize how horrifying all of this stuff is. Don't play around with it. When you don't know how any of this stuff works, you have no clue. You just have no clue, and you just don't know how serious what you're about to go through is. Another thing I like to tell people is, good people don't lie in ways that are going to affect the rights of other people. Like, a normal person who's healthy isn't thinking in their head, I need to lie and say my ex is an abuser, because a normal person's going to think, I would feel horrible for them to go to jail, for them to lose their kids over that, because it's not true. So the first thing that you have to do is realize that your ex who's accusing you of domestic violence when you never did it, something is wrong with them. And do not think that they're going to think in any way, shape, or form, as a normal person. If they're accusing you of things like domestic violence, of beating them up, of throwing things, of stealing money, these things will impact your custody rights. These things will impact your freedom. These things will impact your property rights. Normal people don't lie about those things. They just don't. And so one of the things that I always tell, I talk about this in the video, Stop Believing the Liar. So I think I'll punctuate everything that I've said with that video. If you want to learn more about why that's so crucial, watch the video, Stop Believing the Liar. Because too many people they will take all those false accusations and then they'll just start talking to their ex again, trying to be buddy-buddy. I don't understand it. And I published that video to help people out with that too.
I'll definitely check that out. I know that your ex accused you of some things, and then she got like a fictitious address, and then you took that to the Supreme Court. So You're talking from experience. What did she accuse you of? Are you allowed to talk about that? Or
I could talk about it. It's over. I mean, I've won that issue anyway. So initially, She was able to dupe the hearing master into giving her a 3-month protective order. The hearing master, luckily, she didn't accuse me of physically striking her. I think her specific words were that I locked her out of the house, that I locked her in a closet. She tried to say that I threw her down the stairs, but then I testified that there were no stairs because we were on the first floor of the apartment. And so she just kind of abandoned that one. So the domestic master, which is a mini judge or not a real judge, they're hired to help the judges because the judges are overworked. She said that she didn't believe that it was that serious, but she was still going to enter a 3-month protective order. That's all my ex needed. As soon as she had the 3-month protective order, she used that to get the confidential address. And as soon as she got the confidential address, she used that in the child custody case to say, hey, I can hide. I don't have to tell him where I live. So, I hope that answers your question as far as how she got the address. Later on, I filed the Supreme Court appeal, the writ petition in the Supreme Court, sued the government, won, and they created Falconi v. Secretary of State, which makes it so now any father or mother after me can use that case to force their ex to prove all the nonsensical things that they're saying are true. And if they aren't true, then they lose the fictitious address, which is how it should have been from the beginning. We go back to incompetent legislatures enacting statutes without thinking these things through. Like, I don't understand how it didn't dawn on the legislators that somebody is going to lie to get one of these fictitious addresses. It's like, are they not thinking? This is very common in child custody disputes. Anyway, Falconi v. Secretary of State plugs the hole. And everything is fine now, at least in the state of Nevada. And I heard other states are using my case too.
And there's a lot of other reasons why somebody might file for this, because if, let's say they're being sued or they have other reasons, people are chasing them, they get a fake address, it's all covered by the state and they can hide, they could be full-on criminals and then be using this case as a way to hide from other things too, right? Yeah. If they're being wanted for money or whatever, the rabbit hole can go deep.
She hid from CPS and it worked. Nobody could find her. 6 different reports were filed against her from CPS, with CPS. I don't even know half of the reports. I know about 3 of them, but I don't know about the other 3. And CPS they couldn't find her because of the same. It's like the same. They're so stupid, man. The government creates a program that's supposed to protect kids. They create another program that abusers use to hide from the other program that protects from kids. It's like they don't think anything through. I don't understand it. You can tell there's a lot of frustration here. It's like, to me, this is so obvious. Like, obviously, this is going to happen. You just need to create some kind of protections in place so that judges can look into this. And it's like, nah, we don't need to do that. They can.
No, I hear you, because you shouldn't be able to get a fake address. The government shouldn't have to pay to give you a fake address unless there's a reason. Right?
Unless there's a reason.
There's got to be a reason.
It's that simple. And I guess in other states, you can't get a protective order unless you're an actual victim. But in Nevada, that's not the case. The statute specifically says you don't have to be an actual victim. All you have to do is show that you might one day possibly, maybe become a victim, which is an incredibly low bar. I mean, I don't know how anyone could appeal an order like that. I mean, what are you going to say? I didn't beat my ex up. The Supreme Court's going to say they don't have to. They don't have to show that. The statute doesn't say that they have to show that you beat him up. It doesn't say that at all. They just have to show that you might maybe do it. So since you might possibly do that, they get the protective order. That's, I mean, I talk about this. That's the statute. That's what the legislature decided was a smart thing to create.
I mean, just to ask you, how did you affect, I mean, how did this affect you emotionally? I mean, you're a guy, you didn't do anything wrong. You're being accused of something against, I take it somebody that you loved, and there was a child involved. I mean, how did you handle it emotionally? Where were you at emotionally? I know a lot of guys, this is where a lot of guys commit suicide, because life just gets overwhelmed. I mean, they feel like they're being turned on by everybody. These things are I don't think a lot of guys, if you're listening, you don't realize it. Guys are going through serious stuff here. It's not just, a legal case and trying to figure out the paperwork and this and that. They're being attacked, emotionally. Their freedom is under attack. Their assets are under attack. Their ability to love their child is under attack. How did you handle it emotionally?
It was hard, man.
In the good and the bad.
It was hard because I'm the exact opposite of everything that she characterized me at. It's like she put together a list of all of my characteristics and she accused me of the diametrically opposite. And it's really hard when you go into court and you didn't do something that to you was so offensive. And the judge points a finger at you and says, I think you did those things. And it's like you walk out thinking, who the hell does she think she is? And it's like, and then it gets to you. It gets to you like, wow, it doesn't matter how good of a person I was. None of that stuff matters because this is what I am. I've been given this label, even though none of it's true. And you just start to feel like nothing you do matters. It creates this an existential crisis in you. I can see why people kill themselves. I heard
Right.
I heard that it's especially prevalent among soldiers. I guess it's one of the biggest things that causes a soldier to commit suicide is the family court system. Anyway, I mean, honestly, I feel lucky that I didn't obsess over the protective order case because that would have been a huge distraction. There was almost nothing I could do about that protective order case, and I just focused hard on the child custody case. And when I got the joint custody order, I was able to really bury a lot of that. And then I got the child support order. But I have a feeling, I'm trying to picture myself in the shoes of another father. What if I was another father and I lost all custody rights and I couldn't see my kids and I had to pay $6,000 in child support? Would I kill myself? Maybe. I don't know what that feels like. That must be horrible. You're basically being objectified. You're being turned from a human being into a work slave. I mean, and it's not even like you don't even deserve it. Like the accusations aren't even true. So, I mean, I can see why people kill themselves. I can see why it happens.
One of the guys on my channel, it makes no sense, but the judge ordered him to pay 85% of his salary as child support and alimony. And the thing is, 85% of his gross.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't even receive 85% after tax. So it was physically impossible for him to do that. So he basically was giving all his money. He was living in his parents' house. This guy was a partner in a big four accounting firm. I mean, this guy made a salary of about $700,000 a year. So I mean, this guy's very successful. He's very intelligent. He was a top swimmer. He was a state champion. He's just one of these guys, right? He's just very talented. And then the judge ordered this. And they also gave him no custody at all. They said, you can't be around your children. And he just lost his mind, like he ended up in a mental institution. And he's fine. And he ended up doing actually okay. He actually did pretty well because his children, they were like 13 and they really loved him. And they said, we want to be around daddy. So even though he doesn't have any legal custody, his kids spend a lot of time with him anyway, because the children choose to be with him. But if they wouldn't have done that poor guy, I mean, I don't, I think I know what would have happened.
And what are you going to do? There's no statute that says you can't order that. That's how stupid the system is. I mean, how hard is it to enact a statute that says you can't order a parent to pay 85% of their income? You know, you tell a legislature this and they'll say, well, why would we have to do that? That's stupid. No judge is going to do that. And you just gave me an example of one that did. And there have been judges who've done that in Nevada too. There's a case that published Fernandez v. Fernandez where a guy was, he had to pay child support that was more than he made in income. The income that he made was less than his, and he wasn't. It was a stockbroker, and the 2008 collapse hit, and he tried to modify custody, and I guess he signed an order saying that he couldn't modify custody, and anyway, the Supreme Court threw the whole thing out. It's just crazy. Like you say things like that, it's just like you need rules. Like if you don't have rules, orders like that will occur. Judges will do that. The first thing that the public needs to realize is judges are not Gandalf the Grey from Lord of the Rings. They are not like ultra wise. They're just regular people. They screw things up all the time. And you have to track this. As citizens, we have to track how often these people screw up. And the ones that are good we keep, and the ones that are not we fire. It's just like any other job. You know, there's always going to be people that have to be fired. And the judges are no different. And I mean, dude, it gets me emotional to hear that stuff. I just can't understand.
Yeah, it. I could have you. I could. If you want to interview him, I'm happy to introduce you. Let me ask you this. This is something that's thrown around a lot, and for people that are new, someone who's in child custody or considering it, one of the things that always comes up, and I think it's deceptively difficult to understand what the court means in all the various situations. But what is your take, and how do you present the best interest of the child?
Okay, I mean, I laughed a little bit because
how is it abused? How is it used? What mistakes did you make?
I think
what do you think it is now?
The best interest of the child statutes, because it's a list of statutes, is better than nothing, but it has issues. It has serious issues. The best interest of the child factors they don't specifically tell you how much weight to give one factor versus another. So it is very easy for a judge to abuse the best interest factors to do almost anything that they want to do. So what I think that they should do is that they should have the best interest factors. Those are fine. They can keep those factors. But they also need to go through a list of very common mistakes that judges make. I don't want to talk about all of them. I mean, I have videos on right of first refusal. I have videos on child support and alimony. There are many areas where there are certain things that the judges need to be told they cannot do this. Do not order exchanges at midnight. They're doing it. So obviously we have to tell them not to do it. I think that if you combine the best interest factors with a series of statutes that specifically eliminate certain things from the judge's table, that you might have a much better system in place. I do think alimony and child support need to be formulaic. I do like.
Well, I'm saying from a regular person's perspective who's going into a custody battle.
Well, you have to learn about them.
How should they think about it? Because people always like kind of yell at them and say, "Well, it's the best interest of," and it's like, wait a second, but that's not. So clear, right?
It's not clear at all. So what they can do as a regular person is you need to study the best interest factors. You just can't get around it. You just have to study them. Because the best interest of the child is just, 5 or 6 words. But the factors themselves go into specifically what it is supposed to mean. And it goes into things like the ones that I used in my case were failure to cooperate to meet the needs of the child. So the dental neglect tied into that. Physical health of the child. Mental health of my ex, and then those are 2 of the other factors, so we're at 3 factors. Another good factor is the parent most likely to facilitate contact between themselves and the non-custodial parent. These are you need to learn about these things because you can use these things to modify custody. But I don't think that the factors themselves are enough. But yeah, for a normal person, you do need to at least learn the specific factors. You shouldn't just throw around the phrase best interest of the child. There's not much meaning behind just that phrase in and of itself.
What would, let's say, a naive new person, what would probably be their biggest mistake when it comes to the best interest of the child? Because I think a lot of people, they think they instinctively know this, right?
Oh, there's a lot of common
Yeah.
mistakes. First is custody by morality. So they think that moral issues tie into the best interest factors. They don't. The court doesn't care who cheated on who. The court doesn't care who shoplifted when they were 15. So that's one thing. The other is deserving custody. So those are two video topics people should watch: the custody by morality and deserving custody. Deserving custody is another extremely common mistake that a brand new person makes. They walk into custody court, child custody court, family court, and they think that they're going to win because they deserve to win, which usually ties into, I take the kids to all their soccer games, I spend all my time with them while the other parent works. The court doesn't care. It's nice that you did all those things while you were together. You're not together anymore. You're separating. So we're going to do what's best for the kids under the best interest factors. Just because you were with them all the time before doesn't mean that that's best for them going forward into the future. We need to know what's best for these kids going forward right now. And that doesn't necessarily mean that just because you've done all these amazing things in the past, that we're not going to give the other parent a chance to try and do some of those amazing things now. Because that's what's good for the kids. Now, if they try that and it doesn't work, okay, then there's going to be a modification down the road. But the third thing is, I just had that one. Hold on, let me think. Oh, okay, so the third thing is leaving children with caretakers. I know a lot of people have issues with this. You have to let it go. The other parent is a parent too. If they want to leave the child with a sitter during their time, or with grandma or with grandpa, you just have to let them do it. People very strongly disagree with me on this. I think that in low conflict cases, it's reasonable for two parents to work together and, hey, I'm going to be out of the country, take the kids. But in high conflict cases, exchanges are abused. And so if I think in a high conflict case, if people want to leave their child with a third party caregiver, it's fine, especially if it's a family member, because the child can learn a lot from grandma or grandpa. I know that it bugs some people. They think, hey, the kids should be with us, we're the parents all the time. But there are actual benefits that come from a child being with a third-party caregiver, even if it isn't.
Totally.
This is, yeah. I mean, it's borderline possession, and I don't think people do it on purpose. Kids are human beings. They're not possessions. You don't own them. And sometimes I think people love their kids so much that they accidentally sometimes get a little possessive, and it's not good for them. It's not good for the kids to think that way. Your kids need as much of a
I think it's a modern thing.
I agree, because if you look into history, during medieval times and classical times, there wasn't that sort of. You're right. It's modern. It's new.
Dude, I'm 55, yeah. Right? When I was a kid, like my mom would just say basically, like we'd leave, say on Saturday, we'd watch cartoons in the morning because that was the only day we had cartoons. And then we'd go out, and then we would come home. We had to come home when the lights came on for the street lights, and that was it. And we spent a lot of time with the neighbors and with everybody. And it wasn't. I learned so much from my neighbor, Mr. and Mrs. Moulton. They were really my most loving, some of the most loving people in my whole childhood was my neighbors, and I spent a lot of time with them. They were always there for me. They taught me. Mr. Moulton taught me how to wash cars and make money. He taught me about caring for people. He adopted a boy who was very troubled, and the guy ended up committing suicide. But his love and care was he was amazing. Like he was just he was a really formidable, amazing guy. And I learned so much from him. I'm so glad that I was able, to spend time with him and spend time with other people, not just always with my parents. Right? So, I totally agree with you. Like kids need variety. They need other friends. They need other people to be around, and a babysitter can be great. Like if you got a fun babysitter that's going to teach you how to climb trees or, do something or whatever. It's only good, right? Kids need a lot of variety.
One of my viewers is asking what's your video feed? They want to know what that is out your window.
Oh, I'm here in Brooklyn. I'm in Brooklyn, and we're looking out the window. Across the street is a barber shop, but they kind of it's Friday night, so they kind of have parties over there. There's like loud music playing, and up on the street up there is going to be up on the right. It's going to be open for the weekend, so it's like a walking street. I'm in the Dominican Republic area of Brooklyn, so there's tons and tons and tons of great home cooked food. And I was at the yesterday Thanksgiving. I went to this place down the street, and then they knew it was Thanksgiving, right? So I came in there, and they put on some music, and it's run by a family, right? And then the father, he put on some Dominican music, and it was like some romantic music. And then he brought his daughter out, and then he had me dance with her. So I danced with his daughter to this Dominican music, and we had all this food with their family. It was absolutely fantastic Thanksgiving. I tell you, I'm totally shocked by how friendly people in New York are, because I didn't grow up here,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just here for a period of time until some things happen, and I'll be back in real life. But I'm really enjoying being here, and gotta say, I'm a huge fan of New York
Mm-hmm.
and Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm. Next time we do this double stream, guys, we're gonna have Paul walk around, and he'll be on the big window. I'll be in the small window, and you'll be able to see more of his area. I was gonna just mention.
Yeah,
Go
well,
ahead.
I'll be down in Manhattan, down by all the nice lights along the water. The only thing I won't be able to do is I won't be able to check questions.
Nice.
But other than that, it's fine.
So I was going to just mention my chat box is full of so many solution-oriented, constructive people. I'm really proud of my viewers. It's really showing today with this live stream. I have one last question from a viewer, then I'll take one last question from you before I head off. Lamb Shepherd says, mediation is mandatory where I am. What approach do you recommend? In Nevada, mediation is mandatory one time. I have a video helping my viewers with mediation. Take a look at mediation and settlement. That's the video. If your judge continues to order mediation over and over again, you can sometimes get them corrected on appeal. There's a new case that came out called Batista where the Supreme Court said that if a judge sends litigants to mediation automatically or too many times, then they're basically derelict in their duty to sit and preside over the case. So take a look at the other video, Mandatory Mediation Orders. I explain how to get the judge's order sending you to mediation overturned on writ review. Go ahead, get me one more question, Paul.
Let's see. I would say what was the biggest surprise to you in the child custody case? Let's not say not your specific situation, but like, what was the thing that like blew you away that nobody told you about, that you'd like to warn other people or tell them about an opportunity or whatever? What was the biggest surprise?
I have two. Well, I think I guess the biggest surprise was that if the law is not applied correctly, too bad. I couldn't believe that. I thought that I didn't understand the concept of legal error. I thought whatever the judge says is the law. It probably took me, gosh, when did it? Probably a year and a half, 2 years to realize that mistakes happen all the time, and if you don't fix it, you're screwed. That was a huge shock to me to realize that the people that we elect that wear those robes, that sit on those bench, ignore the laws. Not all the time, but I mean, I'm telling you, Paul, that blew my mind away. To me, that was not even in the realm of reality. That just, yeah, that disillusioned me.
So basically, like the shock was that you could be completely screwed and there's almost nothing you can
The
do,
sh-
and nobody
the
cares.
shock, the shock was this. You know how the law's on your side? Guess what? They're going to ignore it, rule against you, and that's it. What are you going to do about it? That's it. That's the attitude. This is the attitude. Thank you for telling me the law, mom or father, whoever you are. I'm going to now ignore it. And what are you going to do about it? That's what you're going to see when you go through the system.
Wow.
That's the
So it's not even a misinterpretation. It's really like you're saying, like, it's almost like catch me if you
exactly
can.
catch me if you can. That's exactly what happened with the first appeal. The second, third, and fourth appeals, I think, were just the judge didn't read anything. Their assistants signed everything, and they just signed it. And but the attitude is the same. The attitude is the same. If you try to tell the judge, "Hey, I think your clerk screwed up, and you signed something you shouldn't have signed," they're not going to admit that. They're going to just find some way to say they were right. Absolutely. That's why I didn't even bother with motions for reconsideration. This is technical stuff on my channel. Well, people say, Alex, why don't you file motions for reconsideration? Like, seriously? I'm going to go back to the same judge who screwed up and ask him to fix his mistake. They're not going to do it. No. The notice of appeal straight out of the gate every time. That's my approach. If you're an attorney, it's different. Some attorneys, they have really good relationships with the judges. They file a motion for reconsideration and they'll get some relief. But if you're a non-attorney representing yourself, forget it. That's the attitude. The attitude is, sorry, we screwed up on the law. Too bad, so sad. What are you going to do about it? That blew me away. The attitude completely and totally blew me away. I mean, I used the Gandalf analogy and you laughed, but that's what I thought I would see. I thought I would go into court and there would be like this old figure and he would be wise and he would like know all of these things and he would impart wisdom on me. No, no, your child's going to be exchanged at midnight and yeah, enjoy. That's what I got.
Wow. And okay, a couple comments here on the thing. Doctor Strange said, "Are you a lawyer?" No, Alex is not a lawyer,
No,
and I'm not
I'm
a
a
lawyer.
software engineer.
Yes, I'm Ronin, man. so, eh, so that's a completely different situation
Yeah.
there. Let's see what I was going to say. Like Solomon, yeah, some wisdom. Wisdom is the
Yeah, you're not
key.
going to get any of that.
Wisdom is the key.
No, you're going to get wisdom.
I want to say one
Go
last
ahead.
thing. I want to say one last thing is somebody said in here, somebody said, if you don't ever, if you never ever have a child, if you never cohabitate, if you never do this, you never get any problems. And I want to say this. I want to say that's true, but I tell you, man, one of the biggest dangers in life is being too safe.
Mm.
Where, you say, like, I'm never going to let my child go outside. I'm never going to let him climb a tree because he might fall down and break his arm. I'm never going to let him go on a date because he might, get robbed or she might get raped. I'm never going to let anybody travel because, they might get beaten, killed, stabbed, kidnapped, whatever. The danger in life, and I think the key thing is that you want to experience a rich life, a full life, full of all the great things that are possible, and that means that you have to take risks.
Mm-hmm.
You have to take risks. I went to 50 countries before I was 25. I cannot tell you how many dangerous situations I was in. I'm very grateful that I survived. But I'm always on the side of I want to see more in life. And for me, I love children. I used to teach kindergarten. I mean, I think kids are absolutely fantastic. Like, I love kids, even if they're not my kids. Like, I love dogs, I love kids, I love people, and I'm a very social person. And I love women, I love men, like I love being around people, I love to make friends, and I just can't, for myself, I'm willing to take risks when I feel like I want something that I can't get any other way. And I think, something like this, something like children, for example, you can't get any other way. There's no test tube. There's no, what I mean? You can't find them at the used store. They don't have the Salvation Army. There's certain risks you got to take if you decide that you want to experience some things in life. So I'm not saying any advice of what it is that you should do. And I understand why people would be traumatized and even very afraid. And I understand why people would choose not to go down this road. But I say in life, be careful of being too safe. Fucking live your life. Take fucking risks. See shit. Take chances. Right now, Alex and I are doing live stream. We didn't know each other a couple weeks ago, and it's been absolutely fantastic. Alex, I really enjoy talking to you, and it's not just the topic. I enjoy talking to you because you're very flexible, you're very knowledgeable, and also you're very humble. So it's awesome because we can ask each other questions, and that was a risk. It's easy for me just to do a monologue, but I love it, and I'm very grateful to have you on here, and it's all a risk. So I say my opinion is take risks. Hello, Alex, can you hear me? Oh, we lost Alex for some reason. Can you hear me, Alex? If if Alex is off, oh, there you are. Okay, yeah, I just wanted to say thank you very much, and I really, damn, I can't wait to hang out. I'll be in Vegas sometime. I don't know exactly when, but
There we go.
probably not too long. So
So what happened was my Yeti just kind of decided to stop working, and I don't know why I did that. Anyways, I'll just letting the viewers know because they couldn't hear me. They can hear me now though. Anyway, yeah, sorry about that. I heard everything that you said. Sorry you lost me there right at the last bit, but I just wanted to say that I have the same sentiments, man, and we're gonna do this again soon, and you'll walk us through. The last thing that I was hoping to say before my mic cut out was that I agree with everything you said about taking risks, but and I don't want to say that I'm kind of in the middle road, but I think that people like that viewer, they have a place, and I think that if enough of them, come about, that it could pressure the system politically to change some of the rules. I know that it's already occurred in states
Totally.
yeah, it occurred in Texas like a few years ago. They completely revamped the alimony laws, and so you're right that we do need to take some risks in life, and having children is a pretty it's one of those huge things. And so at the same time, you can be smart about it. Like, I mean, I caution people about children with foreigners, just because it's so sad how easy it is to just leave the country. I mean, there's ways to be safe, but not too safe, Anyway, yeah, the movements are getting big enough that the politicians are reacting in small ways in many states. And as long as the movements continue to grow and viewers with that attitude continue, to hold that position, there will be more and more pressure on the legislators to change the statutes, because that is going to frustrate the government. If too many people have that position, it's going to also embarrass them. Anyway, I guess
It's a great point, Alex. Is that if guys aren't getting a fair shake, for example, they're not getting married, and more guys just don't want to get married, and they don't even take a chance. They will not cohabitate. They will not have children. They will not get married, and that's, like you said, it is a rational response to a very unfair situation, and that in itself helps to put pressure on the system itself, and that's a good thing. So definitely I understand that. So
yeah, and then you've got guys like me who are in the system putting pressure on it, like massive pressure through YouTube. I think that YouTube is going to get bigger and bigger for these groups, on my group too, and it's going to be something that I think the government's going to have to reckon with. We can kind of organize now, which we couldn't do before. Anyway,
right. I'd love to be anybody that you think would be good for my channel. Please introduce, and I'll do the same for you. If you know anybody who would be good to do some brainstorming sessions, live streams, I would love that.
Same to you. I guess we'll sign off now.
All right.
I'm going to cut the feed.
So thank you, everybody on the channel.